This is the fourth class of Kabbalah, the Jewish community of Sedona and the Verde Valley. I'm Rabbi Alicia Magal. And in the previous 3 weeks, we spoke about various aspects of Kabbalah, which means receiving. In other words, it was the result of very deep meditation from ancient sages that were commented on throughout the years and have been very inspirational to our own day and have actually been revived in our own day. And so that's why you're all interested in it. We talked about the tree of life. We talked about the sephirot. We talked about the letters and the numbers, some gematria, some numerology. We talked about meditation. We talked about the chariot, the Merkava, which is sometimes called Hechalot, meditation where people try to ascend to the heavens and safely come back. And we talked about not being superficial and just like wearing a red string for good luck or just being taken in because we wanted to use Kabbalah for our own advantage, either monetarily or in our love life, or all these promises that are made. Oh, just come with me and I'll take you to the Kabbalah Center and your whole life will change. It's work, it's deep study, and it's really based on, for people who have been studying Torah and Talmud and Midrash and have been living a life that lends itself to being grounded and yet wanting to be uplifted. So with that, in our fourth class, I'm going to talk a little bit more about a summary of ways that you can reach into Kabbalah, but I want to begin with your questions. So let me hear some of your questions, and I'm going to share the screen, and then I'm going to actually write some of these questions down. So our session is searching for meaning, and we're asking, where am I in the universe? Who am I? What is my soul purpose? How can I have a different gateway besides logic and learning? And how can I do it in a different pathway, a different journey than what I see around me, which in our age is pretty materialistic and pretty superficial and pretty personal over communal. I think you could agree with me on that. And so I'm going to move to something about why some of these answers are hidden and where we can look for some questions. So how do we receive Torah and its hidden messages? This is on Yitro. This week we have Shavuot coming Saturday night, and we will be receiving Torah. So I looked at the Zohar, my Pritzker edition of Zohar, with the commentary by Danny Matt, and I looked at some tiny paragraph out of all the pages from the portion that speaks about the 10 Commandments. That's Exodus 20. Every word was filled with meaning and mystery, and it was heard in 70 languages. At the time considered 70 languages was all of humanity. It was like a hammer shattering rock, making sparks. That's each word, so that every single utterance issuing from the mouth of the Blessed Holy One would be split into many, many meanings. All the souls of future generations are also present. That includes us. And yet, the deepest meaning of God's words remain hidden. So some of you have asked me, why is it so dense? Why is it so difficult? Because from the very beginning, there was this idea of mystery. Mystery at the creation of the world, and mystery at the giving of Torah, and actually these sparking holy words that had many, many meanings from every word of Torah. So here is about alchemy, and just hold on to your questions, because I want to get us all into the framework of different aspects of Kabbalah. In some alchemical writings, the philosopher's stone is mentioned. It's symbolized as a circle enclosing a hexagonal star, which we call the Star of David. The circle alludes to the Kabbalistic Ein Sof, without an end or infinite. The triangle, which points upward, represents the element fire. and the one which points downward, the element water. It's also heaven and earth. So fire and water together constitute heaven, shamayim, esh, mayim, fire, water. And from the 17th century, this was used by alchemists to symbolize the primeval matter out of which the main element of the philosopher's stone, what they called philosophic mercury, the quintessence, is extracted. And so we have the idea of pointing to earth, pointing to heaven, bringing them up together, equaling the Star of David, which actually was used in alchemy and in other disciplines because of its combination of elements. So, what are some of our questions and findings? I am going to take notes. Marilee.
When you were doing the numbers and the assigning the letters and numbers, I'd like to know what 55 means.
Well, let's see. 55 is Nun He, and it sounds like Na, which isn't exactly go. That would be an ayin. Sometimes they are letters, but sometimes it's what else has the gematria of 55, and that's how you look. It's not the two letters themselves, unless it's Chai or something like that, where it actually spells out a word. So I checked, but it doesn't. But what you have to do is go to the gematria finder on the internet, which exists, and look for. You type in 55 and it'll give you about 20 different words that equal it.
Okay.
And I have to admit that that is not one of the places where I automatically go. I find it interesting that Sinai and ladder are together, Sulam and Sinai, that different words can have the same weight and therefore be somewhat related. But it's not the place where I spend a whole lot of time, but you're very welcome to go there. And that is one of the themes of today. With all these aspects of Kabbalah, what speaks to you and which avenue do you want to follow to find meaning? So I'm glad you asked that, Marilee. So about numerology, gematria, and similar words or related words, we could call that. So I'm keeping a list of everything you're asking me. Who has another question? Yes, Anita?
Okay, what you just read before about the sparks and all the different words and stuff. There's the Hebrew expression, is it gamzeh v'gamzeh? This is right and that's right. Is that, yeah, that's what that reminded me of. But you already alluded to my major questions, which are like, so I've been looking at Sefer HaBashir.
Bahir.
I'm sorry, Bahir. I knew it was Bahir. I keep wanting to put a song in there. Okay, Bahir, like Zohar, means clarity and it means brightness, but it's so opaque. It's dense, it's veiled, which is, pretty much what you said before. So how do we go about understanding it? I mean, we can't just pick up this book and, even go into the sources that are in the book. Like, I picked number 9 because I'm so involved with right now looking at mortality because of COVID and all. And so what I read, and I went to the source, it did make sense, but most of the stuff that I read in there doesn't, and you really need a guide.
Yes.
So, how do you deal with that? And then also, you also brought up, like, what's my life journey? What does God want from me? And how do we use this to figure that out? It's been major issues for me going on lately.
That's a beautiful question. How do we use anything to find out our soul purpose? And does it change throughout life, or is there one that we aim toward and finally reach? So the Bahir is talking, like the Zohar also means the glowing, or the everything about it is shiny, right? Bahir is light, and Zohar is the splendor, radiance, because that is how we understand God's energy to be. And we only understand it in our limited way. We are literally, we have feet of clay. We're in Malchut this week. We're grounded. We are people of the earth. And so we can only see one thing at once. I always think about a stage that has spotlights. And you know how sometimes there are on the set, there are different parts of the set, but you only see it when it's illuminated. And that's part of the play. That suddenly the balcony will be the thing you're looking at, and suddenly it'll be the cellar, and suddenly it'll be the middle of the sky, something like that. So even though it's called the brightness, it's not about that it'll be clear for us like clarity, but the brightness can blind us. And so we do need a guide to say, well, what does that one word mean? What is that? What does it bring up in me? And we have so many ways to do it. Many of you are counting the Omer. Well, this is a Kabbalistic overlay of something that was agricultural. We were going from the barley harvest to the wheat harvest. We were going between, or in history, we were going between the Exodus from Egypt to being at Mount Sinai and receiving Torah. But Kabbalistically, it was, how do you refine your personality to be ready to receive Torah? We're going to lekabel, we're going to be doing Kabbalah when we're coming up to the Bima and receiving Torah. We're going to be chanting those 10 commandments from which all these sparks are going out and all the 70 meanings. So the Kabbalah aspect of the counting of the Omer is going through the Sefirot. We went the lower 7, Chesed, the first week, Gevurah, Tiferet, Netzach, Hod, Yesod, and here we are in the week of Malchut, of groundedness and of culmination and of manifestation. And so you've all been doing one Kabbalistic meditation just by doing an inner check. Where are my blind spots? How is my flow and giving and generosity? How am I doing on limitations and discernment and boundaries? Where am I balanced? And going through all the permutations. So the tree of life is something that you have been living with since Passover. And you've been climbing a ladder, climbing down the ladder, looking at the chart. This is one of the avenues. Now we're going to talk a little bit more, a little bit later about the soul purpose, because that is such a big question that I want to save it, but let's hold that for the moment. Let's take some other questions because some of them might be more technical. I want to come to that ultimate question later. Pam?
Okay, probably not so technical, but definitely tree of life. Musar, how does a person justify leaving basic human decency, morality for power and greed?
I wonder if anybody who wants power and greed says, I want power and greed. I wonder if they say, I grew up poor and I will not be poor again, or nobody's going to bully me and I'm going to be in a position where I call the shots. I mean, I really wonder what the motivations are, because nobody says I'm going to be evil.
And I thought that there are definitely people who say, I'm going to make a difference. I'm going to change my life. I'm going to change my family's life. That at some point, the power, the money that comes in from that is more important than their humanity and the people around them.
Right. So first of all, let me say that I'm sorry that you had to come across that, because of, I know the way you lead your life, and it must have cost you something in your emotions and in your spirit. So we're all dealing with that because it's sort of in the air these days. Certainly during this terrible war where Russia has falsified a reason to come into Ukraine. and it's reverberating through everything at the moment. There's the Yetzer Hara, and we have free choice. Terrible answer, but that's the only one I've got right now. That we are free to do things that seem reasonable to us and yet can hurt others. And there are unintended consequences even for supposedly good actions. I mean, somebody thought plastic was a great idea. And, you know, we don't have shattering glass and it's light and you can, and then look at our oceans, you see? So sometimes we have, through choice and invention and exploration and discovery, we have very evil consequences, like colonialism. They thought they were bringing light to the savages, and in fact there was slavery and illness and exploitation. So if you look at all of history, you can get very downhearted and hopeless, or you can look at the upside of what has been found and what illnesses have been eradicated and what mobility has been possible. So I don't know the answer to what would justify turning your back on human decency. All I know is that people are motivated by a very strong urge to be safe and to reach higher. And sometimes their path takes a dark turn and causes great hurt. That's as good as I can do right now. Yes, Nancy, unmute.
Unmute me, or do I unmute you?
I did it. I got it.
Thanks, honey. So today is the day of Malchut crossed with Tiferet, and it, you know, here's the deal. Who, you know, they do something bad, we're not supposed to judge. That's, you know, basically that's Judaism 101, and I know, at least for me, that's hard, but I try it a lot, and so we don't judge, but what we have to do in fashioning our souls is when we see people, because what Rabbi is saying is absolutely true. You know, like when we said plastic, we never thought of how nobody starts out being evil. So we have to try, and because it's not our job to judge them, we have to try and find something good, not for them, for us, because this is us training. The bad person, they have their own situation that they got to deal with. We have to say that's terrible and do what we can, you know, and do what we can to help them and help the impact.
Let's make a difference between judging and discerning. Like the word Havdalah, it's Shabbat, and you make Havdalah, and then it's the weekday. So we're supposed to, in the Gevurah aspect, we definitely judge, but we're not judging. We're saying this, you know, pasnicht, this is good and this doesn't work. This is not good, or I don't accept it, or I won't do that. So we do amount of judging. What we're trying to not judge is say, oh, that person's silly and bad and ugly, and you know, not to judge that way, not to do bullying kind of judging, but we do have to make distinctions, and we do have to make choices. And don't we judge all the time? What we're saying is ultimately there's a higher judge. That's why we get to Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur. We ask forgiveness person to person, so we can walk into the synagogue on the high holy days, and we can ask forgiveness from God. You know, 55 is 55. So I'm going back to something you put in the chat, Marilee.
Yeah.
What happens is when you type in the gematria page, what other words have 55, we could find something that has 55 and it'll give you other words. So we'll get back to that another time.
All right, thank you.
Okay. I interrupted myself.
I'm sorry. No, I interrupted.
That's okay. It's going to You know, we're exploring, and sometimes you go down a path and you go, I don't like this part of the path, I'm going to come back. Oh, let's try this one. I get lost easily when I'm hiking, so it's just the general direction we know, so we're good. Let's have another question. Patty, and thank you for the gematria, the counting of the Omer calendar that you made. So many
Thank you.
people really used it, and we're going to work on it and even improve it for next year.
Okay. So I know that there's different words for creation, and I know that each word has an attribute or an origin in one of the four worlds. And I know that there's different worlds for creation in some of the services that you lead on, in the prayers, like it was formed, it was made, it was, and I just have some curiosity about that, because I feel like it has important value in our daily lives in Malchut that I don't understand. I just have curiosity.
Thank you for that question. I tend to look at four worlds very often. I look at the four worlds in Torah study. I look at the four worlds in an impact in my life. So we're talking about physicality right down here in earth, action, and that's Asiya. And then when we go to Yetzirah, that's the formation of wordplay and art and expression and emotion. Then we move to Bria, which is creating in a different way. These are all aspects of God's creating the world, and in our lives, that is mathematics and science and understanding and application and rules, and it's the thought, it's the mind. And then we jump up to a very high level, the emanation from the thought, which is spirituality, and that's the one that's the closest, let's say, to the creator. It's where you have the area of just yearning and wanting and deciding to do something, and then you have to filter it down like God did, down to actually having the finished product. Before we started, Pam showed us the earrings that she was making, but it started with an idea, and then it went to assembling the different beads and the wires and the tools, and then playing around with it and seeing how the colors worked and making changes. And finally, she did how it would hook onto the ear and made it something useful that you could use. So she went through the four worlds just with those earrings, and we do it all the time. So if you're going to ask me sort of where do I live with these Kabbalistic gateways, four worlds is one of them that I'm conscious of very, very often, and in many, many ways when I study. If you make a menu, it's the same thing. If you make a dinner, if you're preparing for a holiday, you're going through those four worlds. And psychologically, I think I look very much to the Sephirot, the different aspects, for balance. Am I out of balance one way or another, and how do I get to the center column? So those two are very useful tools for me in Kabbalah. These different words are just different ways to understand that when God said, let us create a world and do tzimtzum so that there could be a world, that this emanation went through the vessels. Don't you wish we were all in the same room? The meditation on the process brought about the differentiation in these words, that it went from the ethereal to the physical, and what were the ways that happened. It's very Lurianic Kabbalah about the breaking of the Shavirat HaKelim, the breaking of the vessels, to explain what happened to that primordial light. It was taken back, and it's the Or HaGanuz, the hidden light, and then it was given back as sun and moon and stars only on the fourth day. So they said, well, wait a minute, there was light on the first day. How come we had to wait till the fourth day to get the actual globes of light in our universe? So it was just trying to understand something, and they didn't have, big telescopes or anything. This was just intuited. And the Sephirot are like energy centers, and we just make models. Sometimes you see it as concentric circles where one is within the other. Sometimes you see it sideways where you go from the top to the bottom. They're all just models that were intuited and then labeled, just like I think of it like the rainbow. All those colors are in the light all the time, but you look around, you don't see rainbows. It takes a very specific time with like a 42-degree angle with the sun going through the droplets, and then it's broken up into different colors, which then after just a few minutes revert back. So thus it is with these words of creation. It's all everything all the time, but for us to understand it or even to contemplate it, we need to sort of separate the parts and give them different labels and different names and different colors. And we go, oh yeah, I think I got it. No, I don't have it. Oh, I got it again. I lost it again. And that's the Ratz V'Shov. That is that running and returning vibration that really is the essence of creation and of our bodies and of our breath and of the way it is in the world that we're trying to grasp. Is there anyone who hasn't spoken who has a question before I call on Anita? Okay, Anita, and then O'Brien.
Yeah. When we're talking about names and labels, it's like, I have probably at least a dozen different names, but none of those names is me. They're not my essence. So we give things labels or names to help us conceptualize, but they're kind of like one-dimensional, and we don't really get the essence.
Brilliant. I'm so glad you said that. We have Adonai and El and Yud-He Vav-He and Adonai Tzvaot and Beloved and Whole and Architect. In the Reconstructionist book, prayer book, every time they have a prayer, they use a different label and name of God because of exactly what you said. No one aspect is total, which is actually why we don't pronounce the Yud-He Vav-He as a name, because all that means is the ever-flowing divine process of creation was, is, will be. Ehyeh asher ehyeh, I will be what I will be. And you can't hold that. You can't grasp it. You can't, otherwise it's idol worship. So it's so great that you brought up the different names. Yes, I saw Raya's hand.
Yeah, first, if I could, I'd like to comment on what Anita just said.
Sure.
Coming from a different point of view, and I very much appreciate what Anita was saying, and you too, Rabbi. I've heard that there are 5 languages, Hebrew, Sanskrit, and I don't know the others, that actually are sacred languages, in that the vibration of the word is supposed to contain the essence of what it refers to. That this is not true, for example, in English.
Correct.
At all. And why I think I have difficulty remembering people's names, because they have nothing to do usually with the person. And but it's also curious to me, like there could be 5 different representations of the word mountain, but then mountain, let's say, has many different energies. So I'm wondering, from your, or anybody else's knowledge, of the truth of this with Hebrew, at least classical biblical Hebrew, of the word actually having the vibration of what it refers to.
Right. And that's why numerology got so popular, because they said the word is the energy. And if the number of it, the weight of it, the building block of creation of it is equal to another one, well, then we should look at those two together. So yes, the holy language of Hebrew and Sanskrit, I'm sure others, actually represents the object. It's not just a symbol. It goes more deeply, and each letter actually is a building block of creation. And you could meditate on each letter and the permutation with all of the vowels, in which case it'll take hours, and you will be touching on some fundamental creative energy that you wouldn't get a different way. And it can be dangerous because you are going that deeply outside of the usual boundaries. I'm so glad you brought that up. You're really coming up with wonderful questions. Diane.
I believe that there's another world, not just the ground world that we're in. I believe that there's a world in which we can contact our angels, who could be our mother, our father, grandfather, and actually communicate with them. So I do believe that, but I'm stuck on Ezekiel. I am reading this book. I don't know if you could see it, Kabbalah. You probably can't, but it's the Essence of Kabbalah or Kabbalah. And when we talked last week about Ezekiel, and in this book that I'm reading, he saw things, and did he actually connect with that other world like we can, or was it a dream? Where was he spiritually?
A vision is really entering into a different realm. We could call it a world. A dream is considered 1/60th of prophecy. So what is prophecy? Is it a whole? And is a vision a prophecy, or is it a dream? All we know is there are times when you are removed from this place and you are in another place. That is why when we start the Amidah, we take 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. Now, we're not really going into another room, but it is as if we are removing ourselves from this world with the chairs and the bima and everything around us, and we're entering the world of deep connection with the Holy One. And so that's why we do the Amidah, and we present, it's like we're at the throne. And so we present our documents, we present why we're there. You know, I come from the line of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And then we offer a kind of acknowledgement. God, you're so powerful, and you raise the dead or the deadened, and you lift the people from the dust. And after that, we offer our gratitude and we talk about holiness. And if it's during the week, then we give our petitions. 13 petitions. I would like to see justice, and I would like to see people combined together, and I would like health, and all these things. On Shabbat, it's just the holiness of the day. Then we say thank you, and we ask for peace, and we withdraw. We have an audience with the Holy One. Isn't that going into another world? And if you're in, especially if you're in like a week-long retreat, like I have been at Kaballah or at Ohala, or different Jewish gatherings for a particular purpose, and you're praying every day, and then you're praying on Shabbat with people that you feel safe with, that circle of prayer leads you to a place that is beyond the words in the book, far beyond. So sure, there are worlds, and sure, you can communicate. And sometimes it seems to be with people who used to walk the earth and no longer do, and are in the spirit realm. Yeah. Nancy again?
Thinking about this stuff. I love thinking about this stuff. The first thing that you showed us, you know, they spoke in, what was it, 52 languages? 70 languages. The way that I interpreted it is, I thought Hashem is doing that because he wants to make, it isn't about what he says, it's about what you hear. And I thought there must be 70 different languages in the world, so that he wants to make sure that you hear it. Like it's said in a way that you can hear it. And that's like, you know, like he's really trying. But, you know, going back to what I think that Anita and Raya are saying, and like when I'm trying to find a condor, it's like, it's not when we want to be found. It's not when we're deciding, oh, you know, Hashem, I'd like to ask you for a couple of things. No. It's when Hashem wants you to hear. But when he wants to hear, you're going to hear it because he's going to talk in 60 different languages. And one of them is going to be one that you can hear. That is the way I interpret it. But I also love the idea of what we're also saying, which is another way of a completely different way of looking at it.
Yeah, the Torah was given once and it's received all the time by all of us in different ways in every season. Anita?
So back to what Ryan, Nancy, that was brilliant. That what Raya said, Adam was given the job.
Okay, I just want to say, you made my day. Anita, you just made my day. In fact, my week. And after this, I'm going to call up my mother and tell her you said that.
Well, Adam, what Raya said, I mean, it has great value because Adam was given the job of naming each animal based on that animal's qualities. And again, we have this is true and this is true. And so I think that definitely we have the vibrations. And when we get our names, our Hebrew names, our Jewish names, when we're born, that has definite impact on who we are and who we become, although we have choice with that. And it also goes deeper and should not be limiting.
And some people rename themselves as they outgrow a childhood name. Many a Judy has become a Judith and then a Yehudit. So you can name yourself at a certain point. You might want to look up the Zelda poem, Everyone Has a Name. It's translated from the Hebrew and it's very beautiful. Are there any other burning questions? Because I want to show you the whole list. Raya, back to you in the studio.
So I'm wondering if you have a suggestion based on the Kabbalah or other Jewish esoteric traditions for reaching higher states, of a simple practice that you would recommend on a daily basis, particularly helping us reach these higher qualities such as peace and love and bring these into the world.
The whole practice of mitzvot is supposed to raise the spark so that when you eat, if you say a blessing first, you're not eating like an animal eats just to fill your belly, but with appreciation, with gratitude, with a sense of holiness. And everything that we do can be a way. The Kotzker Rebbe said, and I learned it from Reb Mel Gottlieb, our dean at the Academy for Jewish Religion, any way is a way as long as you make it a way. So it might be through kashrut, and it might be through mitzvot, and it might be through meditation, and it might be through study, and it might be through tutoring children. It might be walking in nature, and it might be writing poetry, and it might be learning Hebrew or learning to chant Torah, and it might be through saying the Shema in the morning and at night. And all of these are pathways to bringing shalom into the world, wholeness. The root of shalom is not just peace, it's wholeness, shalem. And the opposite isn't war, it's fragmentation. So what we want is to bring opposites together and make them whole. We want to go from chesed to gevura, really exploring them so we can get to tiferet. Because you can't be in balance all the time. You do have to explore the sideways and byways, and you have to fall down in order to get up and brush yourself off. And you have to be able to go to the dark places so you can come out whole and have compassion to those who are still in the dust, so to speak. So many ways are open to us. I think that's a very good segue to going back to the slides and just reviewing a little bit. So let's just review a little bit some of your questions and then go on to a review of possibilities. You asked about numerology and gematria, what words are related. And there are books that you can look at, and these days on the internet you can find gematria, and just be aware that there are many systems. But the basic system is where Aleph is 1 and Bet is 2 And I have that slide that I showed you, and the TOF is 400. And there are many other systems, but it's an interesting one way to look at your phrases in the Torah and see what seemingly disparate things are related. Why are all these books so dense if they are supposed to enlighten us, literally? Because that is the mystery of the world, and it is an invitation to go beyond our logic and beyond language to a place that you can only reach if you really are willing to take that journey and to prepare yourself to come out and come back to ordinary life. So how do we use Kabbalah to figure out our soul purpose? Let's keep that for the end. How do we justify leaving basic, leaving the 10 Commandments and doing the opposite? Because of the Yetzer Hara being detoured or broken, bad modeling, and hooking on to a mistaken goal, which is going to lead us back to the soul purpose. And many people have made mistakes and turned their lives around, and they're better for it, and they're deeper for it than if they had never strayed. Maaseh Bereshit, the acts of creation, we have these 4 worlds, and we spoke about that a bit, where we try to rise up. We want to climb mountains. We want to fly in the air. We want to make magic. I have a magic wand, and there are so many times where I just want to wave it and have things just turn out the way I imagine them. It's a natural yearning that we have, and so we're constantly going back and forth between the world where you put on your shoes and the world where you fly. And these elements and qualities we have labeled and put them in the Sefirot, but they're all happening all the time. Very important to remember that God is not a fixed statue, which is why we were not supposed to make idols, because then we would say, oh, God is there. And God is everywhere. You let him in. And God is not masculine or feminine or having any of human aspects, but we are so human that we look through our eyes, and there actually is Shiur Koma. There is a Kabbalistic attempt to talk about God's hands and eyes and feet and the measure. And of course, it's impossible, but it's because we look through our own lens. The idea of Hebrew being the building blocks of life, it's not just that it's a holy language, but that's why some sects of Judaism only use it for prayer, and they use Yiddish for everyday ordering in the store, and they don't want to tarnish the holy language. But in Israel today, it's just spoken. That's the mother tongue of so many people, and it's good to go back to the basics and really concentrate on the vowels and the consonants, and realize that these are building blocks, and really say, what is Bet and what is Aleph? Let's just take Aleph for a moment. If you take Aleph apart, it's really a Vav with 2 Yuds. It's really the upper spark of holiness, the earthly reflection of that, and the Vav is the connector between the two, and it equals 26. So even Aleph, that first letter that has no sound, actually could be analyzed as being the godly creation moment of silence. So communicating with other souls and other worlds, we can talk to an empty chair and come to some understanding and forgiveness of our parents, and reconnect, and talk to those we've lost, that the conversation can continue. And I'm not talking about seances. I'm talking about going deeply into your heart beyond the spoken word. So that is very comforting. And the simple practices are the Shema and meditation and loving kindness and tzedakah. So find your way. And in finding your way, I think that's how you find your soul purpose. I think you feel what resonates to you that makes you feel why you're here at this time with this soul in this body with the history you have, and that you are unique and only you can do your job and no one else can. And sometimes you find joy unexpectedly in a flower that has turned into seeds or that are just floating in the air, and suddenly you just see the whole cosmos and the cycle of life, or in a raindrop that's just dripping slowly down your window, and you just get some insight and it just picks you up, and then later you can't quite hold on to it, but you know it was real. So knowing it's real led to a wish, especially in the Middle Ages, to do alchemy. And sometimes they're related, and they're called alchemy or Kabbalah. So I wanted to spend a moment on that. We still have some time together. And the alchemists, and these were often Christian alchemists, they believed that the whole art of alchemy was contained in the verse, God made the firmament, right at the beginning of Genesis. And the first men mentioned in Genesis would not have, according to the alchemists, reached such old age had they not made use of the elixir vitae, the wonderful formula that would give them such long life. And they concluded that Abram was very rich in cattle, silver, and gold. Why? Because he learned the secret of alchemy in Egypt. And all the patriarchs, as well as Judah, wore the philosopher's stone on their bodies. So this was a belief. And Moses was, according to them, the first and foremost among the biblical experts. So there was this search for the philosopher's stone and the formula for the elixir of life. And how did they do that? Through the transmutation of metals. They thought there were base metals that could be turned into gold. And the transmutation of base emotions could be turned into something holy as well. Now, this is a gift from Anita, whose mother had this book, and it was this was Anita's answer. What does the Holy One want me to be doing? Hold on, I want to get rid of that. And she had this book of the Goralot that had very interesting pathways by throwing lots to understanding an answer to a question. So here are some inside pages with some letters and some charts, and let's read through that. This Sefer HaGoralot by Chaim Vital, and there's a new edition I saw, which translates as the Book of Future or Destiny or Oracle. It contains a list of 256 questions which may be asked. Then, through a very complex process outlined in the book, the reader is led to the casting of lots, which interesting is Purim. The name of the holiday is because of the casting of lots. A pur is a lot. Purim is the holiday where lots were cast when the Jews were to be killed, and that was reversed, and that's why everything is reversed in Purim, but that's beside what we're doing now. These lots are referred to tables according to the constellations of the Zodiac, which is another aspect of access through Kabbalah, or the 12 stones in the Choshen, which is the breastplate of Aaron, as well as the 7 sacred planets and lights. Here they are: Sun, Moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn. That's what they knew. All the possible answers that can be divined are given, and the correct answer to the reader's question is revealed. And this book also provides the names of angels, which we didn't speak about that much, but there's a whole angelology of which angel is in charge of what, which rule over the 7 sacred planets and the 12 zodiac constellations. So Anita, I was just blown away. I did some research on this book of the oracles, and I saw how it has been revived in a modern publication, and I'm really glad that you brought it to our attention.
Yeah, it's way over 100 years old.
Yeah, the one you had is clearly very old. So what was this alchemy? What was the yearning? The appeal of transmutation of base metals to gold was parallel to the desire to raise base emotions to a higher level and to cause transformation of lower materials to a higher level on all planes. And this is purported to be a coin minted from alchemical gold, showing the symbol for lead rising to the heavens. I thought that was fascinating. And somebody said, oh, show me. And they gave him a droplet and said, that's all you're allowed to see. I mean, it probably was charlatan, but fascinating stories about it. Now, we've talked about both contemplative aspect, which is iyunit, and practical Kabbalah, which is ma'asit, like actual asiya. It's the same root. And so let's just read that and consider the contemplative one that you use for trying to understand, and then the ma'asit, where there are these charms that are trying to manipulate nature and bring about change. So the contemplative aspect, Kabbalah Iyunit, deals with the form of the mysteries, teaching the structure of the angelic domains, as well as the sephirot, or divine emanations. So that's that model with the pathways of light and pathways of creation. It utilizes various meditative techniques to ponder the divine and the esoteric underpinnings of the material world. These include meditations on Hebrew letter permutations and ways in which the sephirot, these supernal divine forces, harmonize, and how do they interact. Some ancient forms of Kabbalistic meditation produce a visionary experience of the supernal chambers and the angelic beings who occupy them, and that is known as the Heichalot tradition. We touched on that a little. Now, the practical Kabbalah, Kabbalah Ma'asit, dealt with the use of techniques that could evoke supernatural powers. It involved the use of divine names and incantations, amulets and talismans, as well as physiognomy and astrology. The holy Ari himself, that's Lurianic Kabbalah, he admonished his disciples to avoid the practical arts of Kabbalah. He deemed such practices unsafe as long as the state of mind of ritual purity necessary for service in the Holy Temple remained unattainable. So this was frowned upon and avoided, but the meditations were used a lot. Now, there are many sources to explore. Some of you have books on your shelf. These are just, hold on. These are just some from downstairs and upstairs on two of the shelves of our own library. And I have some of them here. There's a beautiful book that I was looking through, this Kabbalah Decoder. And it has beautiful illustrations, and it covers many of the topics that we had, including a chapter, Bringing Kabbalah into Your Life. It's intended to be used in daily life, meditation, chanting, creativity, study. Some of these are routes to greater awareness. Kabbalah is not for dabblers. The exercises in this chapter require honesty and integrity. Use them to create unity within the four worlds of your existence. What a beautiful introduction. So I have this book here. We have many other books, and I just invite you to follow the pathways that you are most drawn to. Some of them will feel like closed doors, and others will be open windows. So really follow that pathway and make sense of it, but it needs to be a practice. Everything you read will tell you this is not superficial, and it's not glib, and it's not easy. And you need to do some traveling, internal traveling. So before we have our closing meditation, I would just like to hear anything that you're taking away from these 4 sessions, and maybe something that you aspire to do now, knowing that this is available. It's part of Judaism. You don't need to go to some ashram and go meditate with another discipline, although there's nothing wrong with that, but bring what you learn back home and teach it. This is what so many of our contemporaries have done. They brought back chanting and meditation and zikr, which is a kind of holy dance and repetition and echoing. And so many so many things that after we were very wounded after the Second World War, and many of our masters were killed. And so we're seekers. And so we sought wherever we thought we could find wholeness and peace. But let's use those tools and bring them back home. So I'd just like to hear, you know what, maybe I'll call on you and just be ready for a word or a phrase. I'm going to start with Marilee. What are you taking away from all of this?
Well, I truly enjoyed the meditation. I hadn't done that before, or at least I didn't know I had done it before, but when I got there, it kind of seemed familiar. I love that, and I'm going to research and delve deeper into the numerology, and just Googling what does 55 mean in Hebrew, it went off on being content and satisfied, and yet a turning point to a whole new level, which is kind of exciting.
That's terrific. Thank you, Marilee. Diane Bouguet, I've unmuted you.
Oh, my word is internalize. I thought you wanted one word.
That's fine. Everyone has a different interpretation of what one word means, as you heard. Okay, internalize. Thank you. Pam Miller, I'm unmuting everybody in turn.
The affirmations that this is not simple, but it is attainable, that we can reach in and find the things that excite us, that the steady can bring us joy and contentment, and how we can share it with others.
See, that was one word. That was great. Thank you. Anita?
Oh, you unmuted me. Continuing seeking.
And I think we want to reflect back to you that we see your soul and we see it shining. So I just would like everybody to send a little shine to Anita right now. Take it in. Okay. Good. That was necessary. Linda Waddell.
Oh, so much more enlightenment. This is third time I've done Kabbalah, but it's never been at this time of year before. And finding the connection with counting the Omer was very, very enlightening.
Yeah, that was a lucky chance. That was, maybe it was on purpose. Yes, it was.
I was going to ask you at some point.
Maybe I did. Maybe I said Kabbalah, and then it actually got put off from another time, and I thought, let's do it during the counting of the Omer. Yeah. Okay, thank you. Sheila Jackman.
This is my first exploration into Kabbalah, which I used to call Kabbalah. They're both. And what's very clear is I want to explore more.
Well, we bless you on your journey. Just stay grounded. Patty.
Especially in this class, the discussion was so inspiring that it was brought up that the Ein Sof, that everything is one, and every time, and it came up so organically between the people that were commenting, and that's really what it's all about. And I felt that, that momentary popping into that state. And I think what my takeaway is that I'm inspired that after I'm finished counting the Omer, that I'll continue my morning meditation practice with some of the things that were in, like this book, for instance, and the meditations on the different names and things like that. I want to do that again.
Very good. Susan Spector, even though you were just here in this one class, I hope you'll catch up on the other three.
Yeah, I'll say go back and go deeper. Thank you.
Thank you for coming today. Janet?
I do have one word, discovery.
Marvelous. Raya?
Richness of resources, both the people in this group and all the different texts and books mentioned.
Thank you. You brought so much. Everyone brought so much from your own experience in your own life. Whether you were, whether this was your first time or you've been studying for years, each of us is equal in our in the beauty of what we brought, because there was such honesty in our sharing. Susan Burnett.
For me, it was about how each one of these parts all integrate into who we really are and what we do.
Integration, right? It's not something separate. It's not like learning, I don't know, multiplication tables or something. You know, it wasn't separate. It was very personal, and I can't find the word. I want to say uplifting, but connecting and useful and real. So it wasn't something just theoretical where you were studying like how to frame a picture or how to make a blueprint. And these are all wonderful skills, but it was more about how anything that you're studying or going through can be applied to these four worlds or to these sephirot, that it's an element of helping us in our own balance, right? Nancy.
The world is very complicated, but it's also very basic. And when I see, you know, sometimes I'll be honest with you, I listen to the same tapes 4 times, you know, like first I don't even know what they're talking about. And by the 4th time, I feel very safe with it. And I just, so don't be afraid. I'm telling myself, don't be afraid of, it may seem too complicated because it's just such a magically done, very simple system. So don't be afraid of all the words and complicate. It looks complicated because you don't know what it is, but once you get it, it's going to look like those are easy instructions. You know, that happens all, if you know how to do something, you know, like the first time you do it, you're like, oh my God, how do I do it? And then you do it and boom. But when I was a little girl, I heard that, you know, like Kabbalah was cool. And I asked my Orthodox grandfather, you know, could you teach me Kabbalah? And he looked at me and said, no, you're a girl. And I'm so grateful that he did that, because he's made me curious my whole life. I felt like, okay, you know, you always want to be in the club you're not allowed in. And Poppy, thank you.
Beautiful. Right. Well, in the very first class, I said you don't have to remember anything, and you don't have to take notes, and you don't have to understand, and there's no test, because I knew that if you just were receiving at the rate and at the level that you could right now, it would be satisfying. And I hope that was true for everybody.
Very.
Take a breath, allow a breath. We're going to have a few minutes of meditation with the sound, and then a blessing. was trying to fade out. So please blink a few times, come back to the room.
Not ready.
I'd like to share a very unexpected vision that happened during this meditation, even though it was short. I saw all of us sitting around a fire, and we were starting to get up and dance around the fire, and in the fire were dancing Hebrew letters, and they were just rising and falling, and we were dancing around this fire of the Hebrew letters, and there was a sense of calm and connection and communication that was wordless and beautifully felt through all of us.
Amen.
So I'm going to offer a blessing now as we close this session, and hopefully we'll study again many more times. You know, we have a Jewish meditation class every Wednesday at 4, and with Rosalie and myself, and you're all welcome to come to that. Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmerecha. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'chuneka. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom. May God watch over you and bless you and protect you. May God shine God's countenance upon you and be gracious to you. And may God give you the greatest gift of all, which is wholeness, peace, shalom.
Kini hi ratzon.
Toda. Thank you all.